So today we decided we were going to do kind of a mixed show. I had a request for signs and symbols and what they mean, and I thought that was like really super cool. And then we were
Yep.
also going to kind of do a little bit of Goddard, and I took our little reading out of the book, I guess, was Prayer, The Art of Believing.
Yep.
And the chapter was chapter 3, Imagination and Faith. So
Excellent.
I thought these were all, they kind of interrelate too, right? So this should be a fun show.
Yeah,
Fun,
excellent.
fun, whatever it is. You got all your lipstick up, you're all beautified. What's good? This is awesome.
Oh, look, I've been laying around for 2 days in my pajamas, YouTubing and doing different things. I thought, God, I need to get up and put some effort in.
Nice. Well, you look wonderful. You look wonderful.
Well, thank you, Dan.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this whole imagination and faith thing, I don't know, let's kind of take a stab at it, kind of get your thoughts. I got a couple quotes that are kind of interesting, and there was one that I thought was a good thing to keep in mind. And I figured we'd maybe just try to divvy up the show in half. Maybe half of it we'll deal with this, and then maybe the last 30 minutes or whatever we'll try to we'll try to see if we can tackle coincidences and symbols and all that kind of stuff, because I think there's a lot to be said. And I think, when you're trying to manifest, and you're not paying attention to the little signs and symbols along the way, it tends to make it not nearly as much fun, at least in my opinion. So.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So kind of what's your take on when Goddard's talking about imagination and faith? I mean, the two obviously go hand in hand. What do you when I say Goddard and then imagination and faith, what's the first few things that pop into your mind?
Well, Neville, says over and over again that God isn't out there. He says God is your own wonderful human imagination. And basically that is the place where you project, imagine, visualize, depending on what words you want to use, all the same thing. And you then know that because you've launched that it has to eventually hatch into a creation. So, and that's great if it's something positive and you do it consciously and intentionally. But often what we do is, prior to knowing all this stuff from, law of attraction, law of projection, law of assumption, Abraham Hicks, Neville Goddard, and then the countless other millions of people that talk about it, you do it in the negative, and then you end up in the middle of a whole bunch of chaos. And then you start to look and try and find out what the heck's happening, because, of course, at that point, you're blaming everyone and life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because it's always their fault, right? It can't possibly be anything I'm doing. Nice.
Until it's happened to you like half a dozen times.
Right.
You're the common denominator.
Well, then you're like, well, it's really weird how all these wrong people are always around me. I can't figure it out.
Exactly.
It's unreal.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the great thing about Neville compared to, say, Abraham Hicks. And, he's the only one I've ever heard say it in these words, that God is your own wonderful human imagination. So therefore, you have an incredible ability, if you focus, to create incredible things. And it's conscious creation. It's conscious God creation, really, and I don't come from a religious background.
Right.
So
nor I, but that's very
yeah.
huge in his whole whole repertoire here. And obviously, I think the big thing, just to stick it on that kind of the religious-y side, because I was brought up that way. But the whole, we were made in his image and likeness. And I truly think that's kind of where he's coming from, is that concept that we're using that God aspect, that part of us that's God-like, that's God similar, maybe, and I think that is where he's getting that from. So for anyone out there that's maybe trying to bridge spiritual and religion, I kind of think that's sort of where that starts to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. The imagination's huge. But when we constantly find ourselves questioning why we're imagining, it seems that's where the faith part comes in. And I really think that's where most of us, self-included, probably you from time to time, where we actually start to fall a little short. We forget that, no, I'm doing all the right things. There's no reason to question this. Maybe there's a self-love issue. Maybe something else is kind of rearing its ugly head, if you will. But we need to kind of deal with, I think trying to manifest things and doing it in a vacuum where you're not looking at working on yourself, I think you're missing kind of a big part of this, because we are kind of growing through this, and there are things that we're going to show ourselves that maybe we're, we've got these patterns, right? These patterns, these beliefs that seem to hold us back. Maybe we don't think we're good enough. Maybe we think we need to make more money. So I think a lot of times we start to shoot ourselves in the foot because we start to question, like, am I doing this right? Is this working? And of course it works. That's not really ever the big question. It's just, is there some other stumbling block I need to get over? Is this just going to take a little bit more time because of X, Y, and Z? I mean, I guess sometimes those are the hard questions for a lot of people is, how do I gauge what it is that's slowing me down?
Yeah. And also, I think we are so obsessed with speed. I got to get there fast.
Yes.
I think this journey for me has been about two things: letting go and control, surrendering, and just Abraham Hicks talks about it all the time. The art of allowing, the art of allowing, the art of allowing. She says it 100 million times, but it's like this obsession with how do I get over there fast?
Right.
It's like we hear her say it, but we don't just lean back and relax. And the leaning back and relax is actually what creates the manifestation, because you've let go of all the resistance. So she's actually telling us for two reasons.
Right. And I don't know if you saw the show I did, because obviously you're busy, I'm busy, we're all busy, but I actually did a show where I finally kind of let go of my specific someone. And I kind of told people, I called it my specific someone woes. And I knew I was doing everything right. I knew I'd done all the legwork, and it didn't change how I felt about her. But it was an issue of, I'm just going to step back. Yep. I don't care anymore. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I need to go to my YouTube audience and say, hey, everyone, I suck. Don't listen to me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I was ready to go. I'm like, I'm ready to do this. And literally 3 weeks, almost to the day, from when I said, I don't care. Whatever happens, happens. It's fine. I'm okay with this. I'm going to stop doing my daily things. I'm going to stop worrying about it. I'm going to stop caring about whatever. I'm just letting go completely. Literally 3 weeks later, she comes into the coffee shop on Sunday morning, and I'd seen her for the first time in a year and a half. And looking in her eyes and talking to her like we did and being able to communicate about a couple things, it was like no time had passed. I have no doubt in my mind this woman's just completely in love with me, and likewise for her. So it was it was an amazing experience. There's still a couple steps that we need to take. A couple things need to happen. And I actually think these things are happening right now. And that kind of became a second show for me, which is everything is happening right now. And that became my other mantra, because when we put the imaginal stuff out there, there's still that distance that we have to go through. Like you said, everyone expects it to happen now, but now it doesn't really happen that way. So there's still this between here and there. There's still maybe a number of days, maybe a number of hours, maybe a number of weeks, months, whatever. Yeah. But it's that process that you need to get through without sabotaging yourself, without, to keep it on our topic, without really canceling out your faith, without ruining that. And when you realize that every day we're taking steps right now towards what's happening, and they're doing the same, it is something that I found my mind is able to get behind very easily. So that's kind of been my big thing. And like I said, we're 2 weeks past, I think 2 weeks today, from when she stopped in and said howdy. And so, we'll see what happens. Like I've told my audience, I'll announce when the big day comes, I'll announce it. But otherwise, I'm just kind of going through the steps, and I don't want to get into it because I don't want to sabotage myself, right? I mean, I think it's tough sometimes when we try to talk about these things. We're putting a lot of energy in directions that maybe sometimes we wouldn't, So.
But that actually brings up a good point. And I've heard this probably half a dozen times this week, that, law of attraction, people or books or whatever say, you have to focus and you have to visualize or imagine, but then you got to let go. So I'm confused has been the thing. So that very thing, you hang on to the desire, you focus on the desire, you send love to the desire, you enjoy the desire by living in the end result, you let go of how's it going to happen, when's it going to happen, what do I need to do to make it happen, is it going to happen at all, I'm afraid it won't, maybe this is just crap.
Right.
You're letting go of all that bag of
that
nuts.
mental chatter.
Yeah, but you're still hanging on to the desire with enjoyment, but you're letting go of all that other crap. So it's two halves of a nut that
Right.
go together, really. And going back to your point about faith, faith is very much what Neville Goddard talks about. You're believing and living in the end of something that doesn't exist.
Right.
That whole component of living in the end is faith.
Right.
And you're calling it into physical shape. It takes its shape
Right.
through your living in the end, because you're actually no longer focusing on, say, with a person, because that's the example we're talking about, a specific person. You're going from absence of person in my life,
Right.
which is technically your problem, and you're activating solution, which is person is physically in my life. So you're living in the end. So a person cannot actually enter your life while you still got active absence of person. They're not
Right.
here. When are they going to come? So the whole faith component is such a bringing things into existence through focus, because it's a focus-based universe.
And the way
Yeah.
Goddard describes it, and it's just one sentence, which I think he did so well, is imagination and faith are the only faculties of the mind needed to create objective conditions.
Yeah.
And it's like he nails it with that, because that's really all it is. The imagination creates it, and then your
Yeah.
faith of that occurring is what kind of rides it through the end, because you don't question. I think that's, to me anyway, that's what the faith is I'm not questioning every step
Yeah.
of the way. And you actually reminded me of a story you told one or two of our shows ago, where you talked about that striped shirt that you were really fond of. I think you were wearing a black and white version of it.
Yes.
And you thought about it. You literally put 5 minutes maybe of thought into it, and then
I want them in another color. I'd love this in another color. Yeah.
and never went back to it. Never ever
no.
thought. And then you found it in some weird random ass place, like
When
the
I went
shirt's
on a
just
walk,
it's just hanging on some
the wall.
right.
Yeah.
Your shirt's hanging on a wall, the one that she manifests. So again, she didn't care. She didn't think about it. She wasn't. And that's where I think a lot of us beat ourselves up, as we get into this whole, am I not doing it right? Because I hear that all the time too. Like, what technique am I needing to do because this isn't working? Or what am I failing to do? Or what, and it's that act of questioning that I think is really where you're starting to shoot yourself in the foot. That's where the faith part comes in. I don't believe what I've done already is sufficient. And that was why my whole letting go thing, when I did that, because you get out of your way. You
get out of your way. Yeah.
And it's amazing the power of the difference once that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a surrender in the bigger picture, the bigger force, and letting go of, I think I know how this is going to work, or I know I can make this happen. The thing is, faith, when you think about it, faith is a decision to believe in your intention.
Right.
And it is kind of, in a way, although it's not on any kind of feeling chart, it is kind of a feeling of assuredness. You're self-assuring. You're assuring yourself from the inside. I'm having faith that even though I cannot see this thing, it's going to be. And you call it forth with it's like you create a line of energy between you with your faith and it, wherever it is, and then you pull it in through the faith. That's how it is a direct line of energy. It's not that wishy-washy.
No, exactly.
I don't know.
And they frequently talk about the faith of the mustard seed, which I think he even brings up in this particular chapter. And it's like, it's not that the mustard seed is necessarily aware that it's a mustard seed. It doesn't know what it's like to be any other kind of seed, but it knows that within itself it has the ability to become a tree. And it doesn't question, it just goes and does it. It just is what is it is what it is, basically. And I think it's a profound kind of thing to remember. It's just that teeny tiny little mustard seed has all that genetic information and all that knowledge of what it needs to become and what it needs to do to become a giant tree. I think it's beautiful.
And so, it's like, that's us.
Yeah.
That's us too.
I agree. I think that's kind of, and I think you said it very, very well when you were talking about how it's like that connection to the imaginal work. Like, it's almost like the energy component that maybe holds that reality, maybe while we're approaching it, maybe. I'm kind of
Yeah.
grasping at an understanding of it. But that kind of is how it feels to me. Is it's
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
like
I
I'm
agree.
hanging on to it.